Alright, so today I want to show you some more of the snakes that I'm going to post over on Morphmarket, and I think I'm going to go through about 15 snakes today, and I have one more video that I'll probably do later on this week, maybe this weekend, where I'll do another 15 snakes, my last snakes. I have pretty much 40 snakes that I'm going to sell over there on Morphmarket. As a matter of fact, I posted 10 ball python hatchlings over there, and I've been really struggling trying to figure out the pricing for a lot of these snakes, and there's an incredible amount of hidden costs when it comes to pricing a lot of these snakes. As a matter of fact, I priced some of them over there, and it seemed like I priced them completely wrong. So I actually went in and changed all the prices, and this is kind of how I was thinking. As a matter of fact, I have some normal ball pythons that I usually sell for about $50, pretty cheap. And I actually figured out all my costs and did an average, and I figured, you know, with the shipping and everything else on top of it, I'm spending about another $100 on average to actually get those snakes over there and ship them and everything. So I actually priced them at $150, which I started thinking about it, and that's not really the right way to price snakes on Morphmarket. The problem is everybody else is selling snakes for $50, and then they say, well, contact me for the additional fees, right? Instead of giving you the bottom line. So I kind of wanted to do an average, and then I started thinking about it, well, that doesn't really work pricing at $150, because if you bought 4 normals, then essentially it would be 150 times 4, which is pretty outrageous. So I actually went over there and dropped them all down to $50, and then I actually have been working kind of behind the scenes to try to get a fair price as far as the shipping and all my other expenses. So I just wanted to go really quick, go over some of the expenses, some of the overhead that I actually have to get those snakes over there and to sell them. So I actually went over to Morphmarket, and in order to sell 40 snakes on Morphmarket, in order to list 40 snakes, you have to go up to the 3rd tier of membership over on Morphmarket. There's actually 4 tiers, and then the top tier, you can actually have an unlimited number of snakes. But I actually went to the 3rd tier where I have a maximum of 40 ball pythons that I can actually list over there, which is perfect for me. The problem is that at that level, I'm spending $50 a month just for Morphmarket, or you can also do like half price and spend the $300 for a yearly membership over there. So I actually spent $300 just on Morphmarket to get over there to be able to actually list these snakes, which is kind of incredible. And then of course I need shipping boxes on top of that. So I actually looked around, and there's not a whole big, a really big difference between the different places as far as shipping boxes. I ordered 50 shipping boxes, and it cost me like $265. So now I'm into it like almost $600 just between Morphmarket and the shipping boxes before I even think about shipping some snakes. So you have a lot of overhead. That's probably the biggest two right there. And then the other one on top of that is FedEx is actually about an hour away from my house down to the ship center. So it takes me about an hour to get there and an hour to get back. So that is $15 for gas. I kind of figured out how much gas I'm spending just to get the snake down to the FedEx office in order to ship it. So I have all those overhead costs and then shipping on top of that. And I was really looking at the shipping, and I actually talked to shipyourreptiles.com, told them I had a lot of snakes to ship, and they actually gave me a discount across everything on my account. So that saves a little bit and brings the shipping down. And I was kind of looking at kind of my overhead without the shipping. So if you add in the Morphmarket and my gas and the boxes and everything else, I also need snake bags on top of that. So you have to have a snake bag you put your snake in before you put it in the box. And I figured that all comes to about $30 a snake just for my overhead. And then the shipping on Ship Your Reptiles is actually, I got a discount. So I'd say the shipping is anywhere from $40 to about $90, depending on where I'm shipping. So if I ship in state, it's about $40. And then if I ship to like Hawaii, overnight to Hawaii, is about $90. It's pretty incredible. So what I did is I actually added my $30 expense for the Morphmarket, the gas, the box, the bag, and all that stuff. Comes to about $30 a snake. And I added that on top of the shipping costs, which are anywhere from $40 to $90. So now we're at probably anywhere from $70 to $120 shipping on top of the snakes. And I brought all the snakes down, so my $150 normals are now down to $50. So you can actually buy multiple normals and put them all together in one box. Probably a little bit bigger box. I'd have to measure the box and weigh it and everything, figure out the shipping, and then add my overhead on top of that. And unfortunately, it seems like the easiest way is actually going to be to figure out these prices on a person by person basis. So I kind of had this range. I brought all my prices down and then said, you know, the shipping is anywhere from 70 to 120, depending on if you're shipping here in Colorado or if you're shipping over to Hawaii, something like that. So that's kind of the breakdown of my prices. It gets a little bit confusing, and I changed all my prices, and on these snakes I'm going to bring them down to a more reasonable price. And then if you actually are interested in one or more snakes, we can figure out more precisely what the shipping and all the overhead will be on top of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in and I'm going to show you some of these ball pythons that I'm going to post today on Morphmarket. Alright, so here is my 11th snake that I'm going to post over on Morphmarket, and this is my big corn snake. This guy's really squirmy, and look at how big he is. He's definitely going to need a bigger box. Definitely going to have to probably charge a little more for shipping on this one. As a matter of fact, you probably have to contact me if you're interested in Big Red, and I'll have to figure out what box to put them in and then weigh the box and then plug that into the shipping calculator to figure out how much this is going to be. Definitely going to be more to ship this big old guy than a small ball python hatchling. But if you look at the belly on this one, looking really cool. I really love this snake. Really had a good time with this one, but I'm thinking about doing another snake in that boa tub, something that I can breed instead of just kind of having a pet that kind of can hang out. This one I've decided I'm not really going to breed corn snakes, and I'll probably get into boas is kind of what I want to get into instead of just this corn snake as a pet. Alright, so this snake is my 12th snake that I'm posting over on Morphmarket. This one we named Raven. And Raven is a male pastel pinstripe, 100% het desert ghost. And the funny thing is about the desert ghost is some people are saying that they actually think there's enchi in my male desert ghost. So some of these het desert ghosts might have possible enchi in them, but I'm not 100% sure. I've actually seen some pastel desert ghosts that almost look like there's enchi, almost the same as mine. I think it might be from the desert ghost, and as a matter of fact, if you breed this one, you may or may not pop out some enchi. And the cool thing about this one is it seems like it has a brighter line of pastel than some of my other ones. You can definitely see it's a lot more orange right in the belly. Really good looking snake. And if you look at the belly on this one, this is pretty much a clear belly like like normal. I'd say most of the lemon blasts like this have clear bellies, but this is what he looks like, looking really good. No damage, no defects, no anything on any of my hatchlings. I haven't really seen anything except for maybe a little bit of head wobble on some of my spiders, but other than that, I have no genetic defects or anything wrong with any of these hatchlings. Alright, so here is snake number 13. This one is Chewy. And Chewy is a super pastel pinstripe, 100% het desert ghost. So essentially, whatever you breed this to they'll definitely be pastel because it has 2 copies of the pastel gene. Every single offspring from this is a male. So if you breed this to a whole bunch of females, every single offspring from all those females would have pastel in them. And then you have a 50% chance of the pinstripe in here. And the interesting thing is when you have 2 copies of the pastel, you kind of get this washed out faded snake that looks kind of not really impressive until you start breeding it. It's a really powerful breeder, and some of these lines of pastel in my collection are really bright. Some of them are not that bright, so it's really kind of you really can't tell on the line of pastel, although the belly seems like it's pretty orange on this one. So I think at least 1 copy of that pastel is one of my high intensity lines of pastel. Really good looking snake. All right, so here's another snake. This is Slinky. Slinky is a male, 100% het pied, 50% het caramel albino. We know 100% sure that this has one copy of the pied gene because the male was a spider pied male visual, and the female was 100% het caramel albino female. So there's a 50% chance that this one actually has one copy of the caramel albino, and 50% chance that it may have it, 50% chance that it may not have it, but we know for sure it has one copy of the pied gene. All right, so here's the snake everyone's been waiting for. This is Thor. Thor is a male bamboo, looking really good. And this one has no other genes, no other heads, just a straight bamboo. This is one of Bobby's babies. I know everyone's been kind of hoping to get one of these. The bellies on these are usually really clear, but they're really impressive on the top of the snake. This one has some really good patterns and colors to it. Really great looking bamboo. All right, so here's another one. This is Sparky. Sparky is a male bamboo. These are my last two bamboos, and this is, I actually don't have any females. This is just a straight bamboo, no other genes in the mix, and this one is almost exactly like the last one as far as the amount of pattern and the color intensity and everything. This is another one of Bobby's babies. Really good looking, really kind of, you're doing really well as far as eating and growing, looking really big and beefy, no problems at all. And as far as feeding, I've been feeding these guys kind of a variety, you know, I'm trying to mix it up so no matter what you feed them, you can actually get them to eat. I've been doing live mice, live rats, fresh killed mice and rats, and frozen thawed mice. Haven't really been doing a whole lot of frozen thawed rats because I just have so many here in my collection. Trying to use up some of my frozen thawed mice in my freezer. These guys will eat just about anything. All right, so this one we named Porky, and Porky is a normal female, no other genes in the mix. And this one is kind of interesting. You see it's a little bit smaller than some of the other ones. This one, I kind of had a hard time getting it started. It's kind of funny we named it Porky, and then it just wouldn't eat. I thought that was kind of ironic. And it finally started eating. I didn't have to assist feed this one. I didn't assist feed any of them this year, which I was pretty fortunate. Last year, I had to assist feed quite a few, and this one finally went on live mouse hoppers. This is pretty much where I start, and then I've been pretty much going back and forth between all the different foods, the mice and the rats. And the last meal this one had, I think, was a live mouse because I had a whole bunch of them, and I just was kind of thinning out my mice. But this one, I would say this one's doing pretty good on frozen thawed. It's actually had a couple frozen thawed mice and had some live rats and mice. And I think I did some fresh killed on some of these for like a pseudo frozen thawed rat, but you really want to get them on rats as soon as possible. I'd say this one, if you have problems feeding this one, you might want to go back to live mice for a couple meals and then transition over to rats. All right, so take a look at this beauty. This one we named Cobra, and Cobra is a spider. Really beautiful spider. This actually came from my visual spider pied male, and it's actually a visual pied, so it has one copy of the pied gene. It's a recessive morph, so you really can't see the pied in this one. You actually have to breed this to another pied to get a visual pied. And then I actually bred my male to a female 100% het caramel albino, so there's a 50% chance that this has one copy of the caramel albino gene. Really cool snake. And the funny thing is a lot of my spiders really don't have much of a head wobble at all. I haven't really seen any problems at all with kind of any stargazing or any kind of wobbling with the head. You can see it just a really slight little bit on some of these. Maybe this one you can't even hardly see it at all. Looks like a really stable head. And the interesting thing about these spiders is some of them have more white up along the side and some of them have less. I'd say this one's kind of right down the middle. It's kind of what I like, you know, like a 50-50 white and then pattern, so you can see a lot of the pattern on top. Really beautiful looking snake. This is a male, if I didn't say it before. This is, Cobra is a male spider, 100% het pied, 50% het caramel albino. All right, so here is Sunshine, and Sunshine is exactly like the last snake, exactly like Cobra, same morph. The only thing with this one is it's in shed, so you can definitely tell it's kind of faded out. You can see the eyes are a little bit gray there, kind of grayed out. And this one is, I'd say it's almost the same amount of white, maybe a little less coming up. The funny thing on this one is the white seems to be a little more pixelated right along the edge than the other ones. So that's kind of what the belly looks like. This is a spider male, 100% het pied, 50% het caramel albino. All right, so take a look at this one. We named this one Electra, and Electra came from the same clutch as those spiders. This is 100% het pied, 50% het caramel albino, but it didn't get the spider gene. So it's exactly the same as the last two without the spider. And if you take a look at the belly, you can definitely tell on this one, it has some really strong pied markers on the bottom. And usually if you're looking for pied markers, it's these two little tracks right along the tail, almost like someone took a marker and marked down here. Those are pretty much the telltale signs that it is het pied. But we know for sure from the breeding that this is 100% het pied. And the interesting thing about this one is it's super dark, really super dark, no highlights up on the top at all. And then sometimes the normals have some highlights, sometimes they don't at all. And this one seems like it's a really dark, one of the blacker normals. All right, so this one we named Hamburger. Hamburger is a male normal, no other genes in the mix. And it's interesting on this one, it seems like it's one of the more golden colored normals, really kind of a more gold. Has a little bit of white coming around the alien heads, which is kind of interesting. And it's a little bit different. You look at some of the normals and it seems like they're all a little bit different. This is what the belly looks like. Really cool looking snake. And these are selling, you know, I'll probably post these for like 50 bucks plus shipping, pretty much the cheapest snake that I'll have over on Morphmarket. All right, so here we go. We are getting into my coral glows. This one we named Peewee, and Peewee actually is 50% het pied because the father was a coral glow and the father was 100% het pied. So there's a 50% chance that this carries one copy of the pied gene. And the interesting thing about the coral glow is there's male makers and female makers. This one, since it's a male and it came from a male parent, this one is actually a male maker. So if you actually bred this, say, to like a normal, 50% of the babies would come out coral glow, and then every single coral glow that this one produced would be a male. It's really difficult to actually get a female coral glow when you start breeding this with other genes. So it's kind of interesting, the genetics on this. I'd say this is, you know, one of the ones that were kind of more higher in demand last year, right at the end. People are like fighting over these coral glows. This is what the bottom looks like. These used to sell for like $25,000, and now they're really reasonable. It's pretty amazing. And the interesting thing about these is a lot of times they kind of lose a lot of the highlights and the colors, and you can kind of look at some adults and they all kind of turn into a two-tone yellow, and they start getting a lot more of these freckles. It looks completely different when they get older. But as babies, I would say this is, you know, this is probably the best line as far as some of the colors as the babies. I was actually looking at the most impressive young coral glows when I actually bought the line of coral glows. And it seems like it's a lot brighter as a young snake than a lot of other lines of coral glows. All right, so this one we named Happy, and Happy is a female. I'm happy that I actually got some females. I have quite a few males this year, and Happy is a normal 50% het pied. So this actually came from my coral glow male crossed with a normal, and whatever didn't get the coral glow actually came out with just a 50% possibility that it has the pied gene. If you look at the belly on this one, look at the crazy looking belly. Looks really awesome. It almost kind of looks like it's kind of interesting. I have a dinker project with really kind of skinny belly scales like this. It almost looks like kind of the same thing with the smaller and the not as wide of a belly scale, which is kind of interesting. It has, and if you look at kind of looking for the het pied markers, you can't really tell 100% sure. And this one you can tell it's kind of fired up. I'm kind of holding it at a weird angle under these bright lights. These guys have really calmed down a lot, and I haven't really been bit too much by these guys. It's kind of funny. They're kind of coming out of that real bitey stage, kind of getting into a more friendlier stage. Of course, they've been to a couple of shows now and under the camera quite a bit, so they're really starting to mellow out. Alright, so this one I named Elvis, and then after I named it Elvis, I probed it a little bit later and found out it was a female. Probably the only female Elvis that you will ever know. And Elvis it actually came from the same clutch. She is 50% het pied and a female. And if we take a look at the belly on this one, sometimes you can kind of get an idea of if they're going to be het pied or not from the belly. And let's see if we could take a look at this one. This one, I'd say it's tough to tell. Sometimes if you have really strong markers right along the tail, I can tell, you know, almost for 100% sure that it is het pied. And then sometimes like on this one, I would say it's a pretty good bet because it has pretty strong, you know, markers right down the belly, but I can't say 100% sure if this is het pied or not. Pretty much you're taking a gamble on the 50% het pied. Alright, so here's another one from that same clutch. This one we named Destroyer. Destroyer is another female, 50% het pied. Came from that same Coral Glow with a normal pairing. And if we take a look at kind of the tail marks on this one, I would say this one, you can definitely tell, like right down here at this guy's kind of jumping all over, kind of freaking out a little bit. But if you kind of take a look right at the end of the tail, right in here, you have kind of the markers right down the side here. I would say this has a good chance of being het pied. I'd say this is probably has more of a chance than the other ones. Really good looking snake. Female, 50% het pied. Alright, so here's another one from that same clutch. We named this one Brownie. Brownie is another female, 50% het pied. If we take a look at the belly on this one, can't really tell if it's het pied or not. You know, kind of take your chances on this one too. It's kind of interesting. I know a lot of people say, I've actually heard this kind of a misconception when you actually breed a male maker Coral Glow. All the Coral Glows are male. Some people actually say that all the non-Coral Glows are females, and actually on this clutch I'm seeing a higher percentage of females that are non-Coral Glows, but I wouldn't say it's 100% because I'm actually getting some male 50% het pied from that male maker, which is kind of interesting. So I'd say maybe you get a slightly higher chance of females, but you know, as far as the male maker and the Coral Glows, I have never got, so far, I've never got a female Coral Glow from that Coral Glow male maker. It's kind of interesting. Alright, so here is another Coral Glow. We named this one Apollo. Apollo is a male Coral Glow, 50% het pied. 50% chance that it has het pied. And the funny thing is if you're looking for tracks on the bellies of anything else besides normals, you know, looking for the pied markers, you really can't see it on anything except for the classic wild type ball pythons. This one looks really kind of an interesting, almost a lighter color. Really good looking snake, really beautiful. And you can see not a lot of the spots are coming in. As they get older, they get a lot more of those freckles. And it's interesting, I've seen someone, you know, get a lot of freckles and some just a few freckles. Really beautiful snakes. And for some reason, I think these Coral Glows kindly have the prettiest faces of all the ball pythons. If you just take a look at the face, for some reason, these Coral Glows, it just looks super cute in the face when you're actually looking at the Coral Glow faces. Something about the Coral Glows just makes it super cute compared to most of the other ball pythons. All right, so here is the last one. This is Magnum. Magnum is another Coral Glow 50% het pine. And another thing I should mention too is, I didn't mention it at the beginning of this video, but we're actually on a shipping freeze through Ship Your Reptiles. They say they do not recommend shipping until after January 6th. So I want to start shipping on the 6th of January on that Monday because you know, a lot of times they get so busy for the holidays that they think there's a good chance that your snake might not make it next day air before 10 a.m., which is really what you have to ship them. So I guess I should have mentioned that at the beginning of the video, but you just have to keep in mind, you know, I'll tell you, if you're interested in a snake, we can't ship until January 6th. So this one is essentially like the other Coral Glows. There's not a whole lot of difference between these guys. Pretty much clear bellies, really beautiful looking snakes. These Coral Glows are so amazing. And it's interesting that I've actually seen a lot of different Coral Glows and bananas, and essentially the banana's almost the same as the Coral Glow, just a different line of pretty much the same snake. And for some reason, this line looks so much better as a hatchling than a lot of the other lines of Coral Glows that I've ever seen. Really beautiful. And unfortunately, they change so much as adults. It doesn't really matter because as they grow up and mature, then this pretty much starts looking like the other ones as adults. So it's really impressive as youngsters, but once they get to an adult, they pretty much look the same, I would say, as most Coral Glows and bananas. All right, so it is time for the question of the day. And Steve Ravito asks, how difficult is it to switch a young ball python from live over to frozen thawed? And that is a very good question. I would say in most cases, it is pretty easy to switch them over, especially with a young ball python. I'd say as an older ball python, it can be extremely difficult or maybe even impossible. And really the trick is to switch them over as soon as you can, especially for a young ball python. So essentially when a snake hatches out of the egg for the very first time, I've pretty much found across the board for ball pythons, the only thing that they're going to eat are live mouse hoppers for probably at least the first 6 to 10 meals. And then once you can get past that initial live feeding for your ball pythons, you can start transitioning over to a variety of other items. I would say usually what I do is I switch over to a live rat pup and then go from there over to frozen thawed mice, and then eventually switch over to where they'll pretty much eat anything. They'll do like a fresh killed or frozen thawed rat or mouse, and they get to the point where, you know, they're pretty much, I'd say, you know, a few hundred grams, and they get to where they are in a crazed feeding mode, and they'll eat just about anything. As a matter of fact, if you stuck your finger in the tub, they take a bite at it trying to eat your finger. And really what it comes down to is it's at that point where you want to really transition over to a frozen thawed rat, because a lot of times they can get stuck on live, and a lot of times they'll even get stuck on like a frozen thawed mouse. So you kind of want to transition away from the mice and the live and transition over to a frozen thawed rat or a fresh killed rat. And that's pretty much what you want to feed them for the rest of their life. And they get to the point where they're like big, like Bobby here. And let me tell you, if I was feeding this guy live, it would be really dangerous because he could take some, he could get damaged, especially around the head if he's, you know, trying to eat live. I definitely don't feed him live. And if he gets stuck on mice, it would take quite a few mice to actually fill this guy up. So what you want to do with adult ball pythons, you want to get them to the point where you can just feed them one meal and they're good for a week or two. A really good meal, about the thickest part of the snake, so they can take some pretty big rats. And you don't have to feed them that often if you can get them over on rats and kind of transition away from the live and the frozen thawed mice. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.